All right. Welcome to Shabbat Lounge. This is Matt.
And Jake.
And I'm sure you're sitting there thinking, wow, this was much better when I couldn't see them.
Yes, the face made for radio problem.
Yes. And I hope that you can forgive us.
Yeah. So, sorry for the disappointment.
Yes. But I appreciate my oldest son helped us set this up, and he's a wizard at a wizard. That's bad.
That's bad. So, why would you?
I don't know.
He is not a wizard.
He's good at video things, and we'll put it that way, and makes a living at it. And I talked him into helping us do this, and we couldn't do it without him. And that's how we find ourselves here. But we always appreciate that you listen. We ask that you help us get more subscribers. And we would like to get the word out to as many people as possible and try to grow the channel. We are not making money off of this. This
Nope.
is just what we put together, and there's no money being exchanged here. This is free content, and but we do appreciate more subscribers, and it just asks you to share this in any social media platform you have. When you tell someone about it, you can just tell them to Google Sabbath Lounge. And when you Google Sabbath Lounge, it'll be the first few things that pop up in Google, and that's the easiest way to find us.
Yep.
So, but we can be found on TikTok, Facebook, where else, Jake?
Everywhere. I mean, we're on the web. If you're looking for us, you'll find us.
That's right.
So.
If you really want to find us, you'll find us.
Yeah.
So, but today we're going to talk about Shavuot. It's been a little while. We're a little bit behind. Sometimes we work on these things when we talk about them in the Torah reading, and we start working on some of those things, and then it just takes us a little while to kind of flesh it out. So here we are, Shavuot.
All fleshed out.
Fleshed out in the flesh.
Yeah.
So Shavuot, what is it? So after Passover, we count off 7 weeks plus 1 to get to 50 days, and you're at Shavuot. So Jake, what are your thoughts about what makes Shavuot unusual compared to other holidays that we have? Well, before we get there, if you don't know, Shavuot might be called Pentecost or Feast of
Weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you've heard those things, we're all talking about the same thing. So.
Right. So yeah. So Shavuot is the only feast day where it's not specifically given to you. You have to make sure you're paying attention and looking for it, counting for it to know when that's going to show up. You have to count days to reach it.
Right. Count days, and don't you think there's some anticipation? So let's think about that just a minute. I don't want to go pagan, but what is the thing that counts down that we almost all know about or knew about before we came into Torah?
Oh, there's some sort of Advent calendar thing.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think? I think they probably stole the idea from Shavuot, and that concept of counting down. I can remember as a kid, I had this cardboard thing, and every day you opened up a new little door.
And you got the chocolate, right?
Or something. And I can remember, though, I was the kid that was just like, I open
them all.
Ahead of time. And I can remember my mom going, wait, why'd you do that? I was like, I wanted to see what was there.
Yeah.
What else? Why wait?
You showed me where the candy was.
Yes.
And expected me not to just go for it.
Yeah, why torture yourself in little bitty chunks and just get it over with? So.
Yeah. It's also healthier to eat them all at once.
Yes.
Because you don't have that prolonged,
mm-hmm.
Sugar tooth decay situation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I hear. I don't know any of this.
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor.
And he does not give medical advice.
No.
Please do not seek this channel for medical advice. Please call 911. So
if you
I think
for
I'll
chocolate. That escalated quickly.
Well, I don't know.
What were we even talking? What is this show about?
What are we doing?
Oh,
Where are
Shavuot.
we?
Shavuot, that's right.
Yeah.
You talked about anticipation,
Building
though.
anticipation.
Right, but It's interesting though because I think something close to that is Feast of Trumpets, because you're looking for the moon,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Same
it's
concept.
similar. It's a similar concept, but this one is, yeah, it's special.
Mm-hmm.
It's special.
And I think there's something to counting that makes us, pay attention more, maybe. So think about road trips you've been on. You probably didn't do this in Pennsylvania, but in Texas, and I am wearing my Texan shirt. In Texas, growing up, we would count the number of windmills on a road trip.
Oh yeah, we didn't do that.
That was our big highlight. So, do they have windmills in Pennsylvania?
Some, but we mostly count raccoons. So when we came out, we went to the Baker Creek Seed Festival, and when we got into, where is that? Missouri, we noticed that you, instead of counting raccoons on the side of the road, in Missouri you count the what are they? They give you the leprosy.
Armadillos.
Armadillos, yeah. We hadn't seen a bunch of those, so we're like, I guess down here those are like raccoons. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of. So, but I think there's something to that. It keeps you engaged on a road trip. I guess it gives you something to do. Otherwise, you're going, when are we going to get there? How much further? And I think that's why parents invented that game. I don't know.
Probably.
I know that I never thought about doing it myself. Somebody taught me to do that. So, anyway, but there's the concept: counting down. And then you also see some patterns, and I think the Torah, the Bible, is full of patterns, and when we see these patterns develop, we have to pay attention to them. And one of the patterns is mountaintop moments, clouds, fire, the voice of Yahuwah, prophecy, and
then there's covenant, when the Spirit sent to mankind, and this one that we'll expound on a little is multilingual events.
So I think anytime you see these things, you need to start going, what's happening here? Is this a Shavuot type moment? And so, I do believe that when it comes to these feasts, that these feasts were set in place with Adam and Eve, and that there's so much that we don't necessarily know. I don't know what Adam knew. Probably no one does know that information, but we do know that he walked and he talked with the Father in the cool of the evening in the garden. And we don't know how long of a time that was. We read that account and, we think in our head, in our grade school mind, oh, that was like a couple days.
Well, because it's right out at the next page, something else is happening.
Yeah.
So it's not very much far.
Yeah, it was just
the next page.
That much. So, but it could have been years, it could have been 40, 50 years, 60 years. It was probably a long time to, and just everything about Adam, like how long does it take you to name all the animals?
Right.
I'm thinking that took a minute.
Yeah.
You didn't just sit down and go, I'm going to call that one a giraffe, monkey, elephant, kangaroo. I mean, did it go like that? I don't know. Even if it did like that, somebody
still
should
take a while.
Do the math on that. Is how many animals could you name in say 60 seconds? And then how many animals there are to be named, how many minutes would it take you just to say the names?
Like a normal person, not someone like...
Not an auctioneer.
Right.
So,
exactly.
But yeah, just think about just reading the names. Have you ever been to a graduation?
Yes.
Yeah, that takes a while to read a bunch of names.
It does.
And so, much less think creating a name.
Have you ever read the genealogies? You fly right through that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you're reading them
Mm-hmm.
name by name.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. But
yeah, according to the map, you've only gone 4 inches. But in reality, who knows how long that time is.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I do believe in that time, Yahuwah taught Adam about the feast and these things. He knew more information than what I once thought.
Right, and usually the evidence for that is when the sun and the moon and the stars are given, they're given for Moedim, right? So
Yeah, it tells you the very beginning
what
the purpose of the sun, moon, and stars are. Yeah. So anyway, And Numbers 11:25 is where you can find some of this information. And then Yahuwah came down in a cloud and spake unto him, and took of the Spirit that was upon him, and gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass that when the Spirit rested upon them, they prophesied and didn't cease. So there's a couple of things here. And the first thing is this concept of the Spirit being passed down. And Jake, I only thought the Spirit stuff happened in the New Testament.
Right. Yes, that's where it happens. That's the whole point of the New Testament is now we have the Spirit, so that's what we listen to now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, but it seems like you're showing that in Numbers this was happening too.
Yes.
Way back there in this historical document.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. So, and it also states that the rest upon them, which makes me think of the tongues of fire, and they prophesy. So, definitely, this could be contrary to things that you once thought. If you're new to this, that the Spirit was there all along. It wasn't a new concept for the Spirit to come down on someone,
right,
and fill them and them prophesy or say something. And even in this week, we're talking about Balaam, the donkey talks, and so and then he does say even the rocks could cry out. So
yeah,
it shouldn't shock us when we see these things.
Yeah. Now I've heard on that note that while the Spirit was given to specific people in the Old Testament, but I think if you go to Nehemiah, it explains there's a verse in Nehemiah, and I don't know it offhand, but it tells you that the Spirit is with them also in the wilderness. So just like with us, Spirit's with us as well.
Yep. So 11:25, we've got this cloud, we've got fire. Does it say fire? It hadn't said fire yet.
No, but there are 70 elders.
70. I think anytime you see that number 70, it should be like ding, ding, ding. We're talking about a representation of 70 nations. And so, seems like there's a direct reference there. And so, when you read it, Numbers 11, Jake, do you think it's a possibility that was about 50 days after Passover?
It makes sense. I mean, you have the same events happening as are expressed in what Shavuot is and when Shavuot happens. And I believe prior to that, you see them doing Passover. Mm-hmm. So, or being reminded again of Passover.
And we admit there's some speculation here and there,
But right, when we're following patterns, we're kind of seeking the pattern, seeing what unfolds.
Yep. And what about the 70, Jake?
Right. So, as you had mentioned, 70 nations, 70 representing 70 nations. There's the 70 elders that are given the Spirit to prophesy in Numbers there. And then we're talking about how that perfectly aligns with this idea of having the mixed multitude come out of Egypt. So they would have spoken the languages of the nations. I don't think it's a stretch to think that.
Mm-hmm.
The Spirit descends, they prophesied. And yes, like you said, they had the Spirit back then.
Clearly. And so when you break down 70, these are the letters. And so what are the letters, Shake?
Well, they're these, obviously. You got Mem, Yod. What's this one?
I don't remember now.
Well, if we go to the next slide, it will tell us.
It does.
And
this is Shin, I believe, at the end.
Yeah.
So, but we do have it broken down.
And
Ein. How could we forget that? So, but when you break down each of the letters individually, you get Shin, which means to press. Goes back to a teaching that we did on. We talked about olive oil and being pressed into to get the oil. But Shin is this idea of completeness after being pressed, where there's if you're not complete, you haven't been pressed. So there's
Right,
kind
you
of this
can't
duality.
become where you see everybody is being pressed. I mean, even Yeshua was pressed, not squeezed out of sin, but squeezed out of self, right, and a self will that he wanted to let go to the side and follow Yahweh's will.
But definitely this concept of this pressing and the bet. Is that right? Bet or the bait?
Bait. Aleph bet vet. Bet, I guess.
Bet.
That's how I would say it.
Yeah. There's a family, a house, congregation, a mixed multitude. And what's the next one? How do you think you say that one?
I say ein.
Ein.
Yeah. So this is watch or know, and what came to mind with that is that the multitude will be watching and all will know him, right? So it's this idea of 70 nations, the Spirit coming and all seeing and watching and knowing, and so. And then Yod, obviously, the multitude will worship them, Yahweh. It goes with this all knowing him, and all will bow to him, and then Mem, which is blood, right? You can't enter in unless the blood has been paid for your sins, right? And all of that tied into what the multitude is.
Yeah.
So
70.
Yep.
And what did we say this one was?
Ein.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, very good. And so then let's jump over into Acts chapter 2, 1 through 13. And it says, when Pentecost, the 50th day after Passover, came, all the believers were together in one place. Suddenly a sound like a violent blowing wind came from the sky and filled the whole house where they were staying. Tongues that looked like fire appeared to them. The tongues arranged themselves so that one came to rest on each believer. All the believers were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages as the Spirit gave them the ability or utterance to speak.
Right, so that kind of, while we were discussing this, Matt was like, so there's this idea of 70 in both of these, and I'm like, I'm not really seeing it. And then we started throwing together this idea of the multitude and how the multitude would have been represented by 70 nations and the 70 elders that we talked about in Numbers. And so we kind of started digging into that and found some interesting things.
Well, and the concept of the multitude of being the people that came out of Egypt is a great multitude.
Right.
Representing all 70 nations.
Yeah.
And that's just something that I hadn't really thought about much, and then it made sense, though, that if you have a multitude of people, because the way I think Exodus probably worked is, people in Egypt knew Hebrews, and they even during the plagues, I feel like they had to talk to people, and even though they were in Goshen, and but there was some kind of communication that happened, and they were like, hey, what are y'all doing over there? Why are you putting the blood? Why? And they would tell them the story, and they'd be like, okay, I don't want my child to die. That'll keep me safe. I'm in. And I think that's where, and if you think about it, it's a lot the way a lot of people start with Yeshua. It's a pretty basic place to start, and I think that a lot of the people that were in that mixed multitude, they were starting at a very milk drinking babe state, and had a lot to learn, which was very clear as they came across the desert. There were people that didn't know much, and they were starting at ground zero. And you get this concept of a mixed raced multitude who spoke multiple languages. It makes sense that they might not have all spoke Hebrew.
Right, yeah, and the question that kind of came to my mind was how... So that 70 elders was of the 70 nations, and then which was kind of an odd thing to think about, because you never really hear about that. You hear, well, there's the 12 tribes, and they're given instruction. Yeah. It's like, well, how did they assimilate into those 12 tribes? And just like Matt was saying there, they see during the first Passover, the Hebrews doing something, and they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna jump in there and help and get through this with you."
Yeah.
And then when they leave together, they're like, "Okay, I'll be part of. What are you, a Levite? I'll be that."
Yeah.
And so that's how they got mixed in. So
Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense how that would happen, and that's why they were, a mixed race. I think everyone, until you start studying this stuff out, you think they were all Jews, and they all were all related to the same person, but it's more than that. It was a mixed race, a mixed multitude of people. It's a big group of people,
right,
from diverse backgrounds,
right,
and they probably did represent every part of the known world at the time.
Yeah. So that's real confusing to me when people say, "Well, those were for the Jews." It's like, well, we can all agree that there were at least 12 tribes, not just just the Jews there, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think, and definitely, and we've said that, but it's true that if you're just coming into this, you should research these things about the multitude and see what you come up with. And so then we go back to Genesis 10, and in Genesis 10, some translations call this the Table of Nations. And so if you may go look at your Bible, and it may call that the Table of Nations. And so you have the descendants of Noah. In Genesis 11, we see the Tower of Babel. And so the common understanding is that the people are scattered into 70 countries or 70 nations, because there's 70 languages mentioned here.
Right. So we get that idea. They go through, it's real funny how it goes, because you're like, why is it giving me this list of all Noah's descendants? And then after that, it's right into the Tower of Babel, which is like, before all these descendants have happened. It's like, it kind of jumps back to meanwhile this was happening. And you get Tower of Babel, and it's spread into this, the idea of the 70 nations. So
yeah. And they all spoke one language at Babel, and then after Babel they speak 70, which is kind of ties back into there were 70 different people groups.
Right, and it doesn't specifically say that they spoke 70, but the understanding is that there was this 70 nations concept.
And so then we found this interesting link, and so this came from, I think, a Baptist church, but I thought they did a pretty good job of breaking this down. This is a table for 70 nations, and so this, if you want to count these, you come up with 70. And I like that they had a map of where these possible descendants went around the world. And there's a lot of conversation about that, and I'm sure there's,
it's kind of, a lot of it's speculative.
Yes, but I'll leave that in there. There's a lot of extra information. I just thought it had some good graphs, charts, and other sources that you can look at to help you research it. So that's really the only reason I had that in there. And then when we go back to Acts 2, so we kind of flip-flopping here a little bit. Once you read that one, Jake.
Okay, so devout Jewish men from every nation were living in Jerusalem. They gathered when they heard the wind. Each person was startled to recognize his own dialect when the disciples spoke. Stunned and amazed, the people in the crowd said, "All of these men who are speaking are Galileans. Why do we hear them speaking in our native dialects? We are Parthians, Medes, and Elamites."
So then it goes on to say, duplicate.
We are people from Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, the province of Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egypt, and the country near Cyrene and Libya. We're Jewish people, converts to Judaism, and visitors from Rome, Crete, and Arabia. We hear these men in our own languages.
Okay. And I think going back there, we hear these men in our own languages. I think that's, that's the part where I'm like, maybe it was what they heard, but I mean, it does say they spoke with a certain tongue, and it makes sense with the idea of speaking in tongues that it would have been a actual thing that
A speaking miracle.
right. But I mean, it's interesting to speculate.
Yeah.
And so it continues as they tell about the miracles that God has done. All of these devout men were stunned and puzzled, and they asked each other, "What can this mean?" Others said jokingly, "They're drunk on sweet wine."
As long as it's sweet, I
Yes,
guess.
not the sour kind. So, speaking of, no, never mind. I'm about to chase a rabbit. Okay.
All right, no rabbits.
No rabbits were harmed in the making of this production. So do you see the connections of multiple? You've got multiple nations, mixed multitude, and all the nations being represented is kind of what we're trying to show here.
Yep.
The book of Jubilees. We're going to go take a look at that.